In this tutorial, we're going to take our two versions of our sword and we're going to use them to create a set of textures. So the first thing we want to do, if we have not done it already, is right click somewhere here in negative space being anywhere you don't have a model, and say unfreeze all. I'm going to click on my background image and hit delete. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and open up my Scene Explorer. You will see inside there I have two objects, my Gladius underscore HP. That's the one that we went through and we did our subdivision work on. If we were to come over here and click subdivision surface, we would see it round out more. Alright, I'm going into wireframe there. Then we also have our Gladius underscore LP. Our Gladius underscore LP, if I put an unwrap UVW on it and say open UV editor, we see that that one has a completely unwrapped UV layout. So, all right. So notice both of these swords, they sit in exactly the same location in the world. That's because when we go to use our low poly to render out that high poly detail onto the low poly is going to be looking out at the polygons around it. So that's why they have to exist in the same location in the world. Alright, so my low poly here, he only has one material assigned to him. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my high poly. Here's my low poly. If I open up my material editor and just bring over a standard and assign that. Alright, this is my sword underscore LP. And now I'm going to just notice I have a second edit poly on here. That's because when I come over here to export, so I'm going to do File, Export Selected. I can say Gladius underscore LP and hit save. The settings are already in here from before, but really we just want media and entertainment. We turn off animation. Under geometry, we turn on smoothing groups, and we hit OK, and that exports out the sword. Another thing is on the sword, you want to make sure you go into element, grab the whole thing, and make sure it's all assigned to one smoothing group. So you can hit clear all, and then just click one, so it's all on one smoothing group. Because that smoothing group detail, we don't need anymore because we're going to be using our normal after this. So you could always, if you need to make any changes, like double checking your smoothing groups, just go back, export, and save over the same low poly mesh. Alright, now I'm going to hide my low poly, and I'm going to expose my high poly. Now our high poly, we need to do a little bit more work with it. Specifically, we're going to assign materials to different areas of it. So let's open up our material editor. And that's my sword LP, so he's going to stay over there. What I need to do is bring over a multi-sub-object material. I'm going to bring over a standard. I'm going to copy that 4 times. I'm going to plug those into, I'm going to plug those into 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's double click on this guy, set the number to 4, and then let's give it 4 different colors. We want a blade, so we'll kind of make the blade a little blue. We want the handle, so that's going to be kind of this nice brown wrapping on it. And then we want to have the hand guard, which will make that kind of like a cool, kind of goldish color. And then, just in case there's some other kind of detail we want, like maybe we want to have like a wood on there. We want to make sure that our colors are distinctly different, so we're just going to do this last one as a green. Alright. So now, you want to make sure that the model you have selected is your high poly. Right over here it says Gladius high poly. I'm going to go to create, because I want to make sure I'm not in the sub-object. I'm going to right click on this master material, right, the multi-sub-object. Right click and say assign material to selection. So now I'm going to come over here and in edit poly, I'm going to go into element, click on everything, make sure everything's assigned to 1, and I'm going to turn off use NURBS subdivisions. All right. Now let's go through and we're going to start assigning materials to the rest of it. So if we select the blade, that's definitely ID 1. This part here, the handle, if we were looking at our reference for the sword, all right, let's go ahead and we'll get the wood on there. So let's just go ahead and we'll assign everything on the rest of it to ID 2. All right, and now we can go through and start selecting the other areas. And this is why it's good to have subdivision the subdivision stuff off, because now it's going to make it easier to select these areas. Like I just region selecting here, and I'm going to grow my selection because I want to take everything that makes up the handle and assign that ID. We're going to go 4 for everything else on the handle. I'm going to go ahead and say default shading here. Alright, and again this is going to be ID 4, alright, because we have the blade, that's one material, the wood, that's a second material, the handle, it's a third, and then we have this nice gold detailing, which we're going to click on. It's the last part. So let's zoom out and zoom in here. I can grab this and then just use my grow, and then I'm going to assign that ID 3, and then we're going to do a similar thing down here where let's go into element, click on the blade, and under edit geometry say hide selected, and then we could come back in and grab these polygons and say these are going to be ID 3, and then we just want to unhide all. Alright, so now we have different materials assigned to our sword. We're going to click use NURBS subdivisions, make sure that's turned on again. And now we're going to take this sword and we're going to export him out as well. So I'm going to copy that name again and say file, export selected, Gladius, underscore HP, and hit save. Okay. So we can save this in case we need to come back to it later. I'm going to pause the tutorial now, close Max, and open up Substance Painter. I'm going to make sure I don't have any unnecessary programs running, because Substance can be, it takes a lot of memory. So I will, but when I restart it, Substance will be open. Alright, Substance is open. The usual pop-up windows are here. It's letting me know there's a newer version. I'm going to say no, I don't want to download that at this time. It also has a welcome screen, which is, you will find this useful, so you might as well keep that available to remind you that there's all sorts of help. Substance Share will actually allow you to download custom materials and smart materials that people made, so that's handy to have. You would just log into that with your Substance Painter ID, which I believe is probably just your school email. So let's close this. So to get started, we're going to come up here, File, New, and I'm going to keep working with the Unreal Engine 4 template. So let's click Select, and now we're going to go to where our Gladius is, copy that path, and what we want is our Gladius underscore LP. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. I'm going to go ahead and set my document resolution to 1024 and click OK. And now it should load up my sword. Alright, there's my sword model. Over here, if I hold Alt and click, that'll orbit around it. If I click to make the 2D view active and hit F to focus, roll the middle mouse wheel, zoom in and out, that shows you the UV layout and how the materials will be applied to it. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to go ahead and save this file, save. Because like I said, Substance is buggy. It has a chance it may crash on you, so just want to take your time. Alright, so now what's interesting about this project is this sword is actually a 2-to-1 aspect ratio. So we need to change this first value to be smaller. So it's actually 512 by 1024. So that means it's actually half the size, it just doesn't update the display here, right? So you're going to end up with a narrow texture So now we're going to come down here. We need to bake out our mesh map, so we're going to click on that. And again, in here, same thing, we need to unclick the lock button. We're going to change our height to 1024 and our width to 512. And now I'm going to come in here and under high definition meshes, I'm going to click and select my Gladius underscore HP and say open. I'm going to keep these things as they are. I'm going to go to ID, and now for color source, I want to do material color for how I'm going to generate my materials. All right. So now let's go ahead and bake these out. There we go. So it went through, it baked out all of my textures. You can see them all populated. This is a great time to save your project again. You can see how some of that crisp detail came in. We hold Alt, we can click and orbit around here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder here. Delete this layer. And in this folder, I'm just going to bring in a material. So let's find a metal. There's this cool iron rod damage. So let's make our sword look older. Look at that. That's pretty cool, right? I'm going to drag that into the folder. See the folder's open, it's in there. And I'm going to right click here on the folder and say add mask with color selection. And that opens, there's this properties window. I'm just going to click pick color and I want to select the blue. And so now what it's done is it's masked out this area. So that's why in 3ds Max we went through and assigned materials so we could generate an ID map in order to do this. So let's close that folder. And now I'm going to make a new folder. And in this one, let's put this wood walnut. Let's drag that up. And we're just going to right click and say add mask with color selection. Oops. Compare mask, it's the wrong one. I'm going to right click on this and say mask with color selection and pick the color. There we go. See how it's got that wood on it. And then let's make one more up at the top. And let's put in here, let's put gold. And make sure the gold is actually in the folder. And right click, say add mask with color selection and pick the color. There we go. Now we got the color on there. And now we just have the handle left. And so the handle was kind of interesting. It had more of a, almost like a, I don't know what kind of material that was. Like a really polished sort of material. Like a porcelain, but I doubt that's what it was. Let's put, find something good in here. I'm looking for something neat, one of the defaults. Why don't we just put this? I think there's actually like this leather ruff. I'm just going to put this leather ruff on it. And then add mask with color selection, pick the color. There we go. Alright, so that in a nutshell is how you get more than one material on. Now there's other ways you can go about getting different materials on there. You can mask out areas. This is really the most simple and basic way. If I hit File, Save, that would get everything in there. Now there's a lot more that you can do with Substance. There are smart materials, which smart materials are more robust, more complex. They allow you to do more with them. You can download them from online, like I said, from Substance Share in order to add additional ones in. If there was one you wanted to try, like maybe a different one, like if I wanted to change out, I'm going to come in here and delete this iron raw damaged, and I'm going to pull in this knife material I have. Right, and so this has kind of like bloody stains on it and chips, and it's worn away. Right, and what's happening inside here is this material is actually made up of many things. There's a steel rough, and then there's all these different blend layers underneath it that's creating this kind of effect on top of it, right? And so that's, you can kind of get these sort of effects by um, layering things together. And like I said, people have created smart materials online that you can download and look at if you wanted to try out some other ones. So that's really it. That's about as far as I wanted to take this first tutorial working with this. Let's get rid of wood walnut here and throw one of these other ones in there, like this kind of weathered wood. Okay, that looks really lame. That was kind of lame too. So you could try, keep looking around till you find one that you like. You could just stick with the one that I'd shown you earlier as well. Yeah. I'm going to go back to the basic one. So there we go. That's kind of the main parts of working with this. Just moving these things between the proper folders. And you can go in and name them. Like you could call this blade, handguard, and then name the other areas as well. So let's make sure we save this file, save, and I'm going to go ahead and use my snipping tool to get a snip of this. And I'm doing that just because I'm always concerned that this program may crash on me, so which is always fun. The better your machine is, and the faster the machine you have, the less likely it's going to crash. Now I'm in _B_ Gladius _SP for Substance Painter. Okay. Now let's take these textures and we're going to File, Export Textures. I'm going to specify the location I want them to. It's the usual one. Same one where my object is, and say Select Folder. In this case, I'm going to use again my Unreal Engine presets. Export these out. And now when I look in that specific folder, I can just come in here and rename these, right? And so the Gladius base color, I remove everything else, and it's just Gladius _BC for base color. And I just want to put my initials at the front. So let's come over to the normal. When I say normal, it's the last underscores normal. And all normals have this kind of bluish purple color to them. And then this last one is occlusion, roughness, and metallic, and that's ORM is what we'll call that. All right, there you go. So now you've gone through, you've created textures for these. You do not need to apply it in 3ds Max. If you were going to apply any, you would just plug the base color into the diffuse channel, but you don't have to do that. That's not important because we're going to bring it into a game engine, and that's where we're going to plug those in and see them. So good luck.